This is the accompanying practical application lecture to our Introduction to Organizational Communication. And I'm going to connect organizational communication and its key definitions to the real-world challenge of climate change. So climate change is long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns, which do naturally occur, but in this case are being accelerated by the release of large amounts of carbon dioxide. This in turn is creating impacts on human life, and in order to successfully respond, humans need to adapt to existing impacts and try to mitigate future impacts. So we will start by scanning the organizations that matter in climate change. So first there are governmental organizations, which are formal governing actors on both the local and national scale. These can include the federal government and its various agencies, such as the Environmental Protection Agency or the EPA within the United States, or it could be on a local level, the mayor's office, which governs a city. There are many organizational structures within government. For some of these, their leaders are elected by citizens, others are appointed, and others are hired through a more traditional HR process. Governmental organizations represent the more formal side of climate change. They will institute policies or not institute policies that address climate change by allotting or taking away money from climate change initiatives, by creating or abolishing laws or rules that people or companies must follow to reduce carbon emissions, and other actions. There are also corporations or businesses. These organizations are geared toward making a profit by conducting business. Organizations can be very powerful and use enormous amounts of resources. Their choices on how they make their products or services, how they market them, etc., can have a big influence on the environment. For instance, a company's leadership may decide that making annual profit is more important than environmental considerations that may cut into profit. And so they might make choices that exacerbate climate change. Or a company may decide, either through a spirit of social mindedness or due to pressure from their consumers, that making environmentally friendly choices is the right path. The choices made by large corporations have enormous impacts on climate change outcomes. There are also non-governmental organizations or NGOs that aren't profit-oriented but aren't governments either. They often depend on donations, grants, or other revenue earning schemes, and these organizations generally have a cause and mission that they work towards. So NGOs may advocate for or against climate change adaptation or mitigation actions, depending on their mission. Churches, clubs, and local associations are also organizations, and they are generally labeled as nonprofits, and they may even take action for or against climate change as well. For instance, some religious groups may be strident deniers of climate change due to their religion's dogma and beliefs, whereas others may take the opposite position. There are more organizations that influence climate change outcomes, but I'll stop here for now, and let's take a look at why these organizations matter to climate change and organizational communication in particular. First, the words, messages, symbols, and interactions, the communications within these organizations and between these organizations deeply influence us and our choices. What we choose to do, what we choose to buy, what we choose to believe, what we choose to value, what we choose to study, where we choose to work, are influenced by the organizations to which we belong and surround us, whether or not we are conscious of that influence. So the stance we take on climate change, whether we believe in it, how serious we believe it is, whether we take actions to try and address climate change, are all influenced by the government that governs us, the businesses that advertise to us, the religions to which we belong or don't belong, the schools that we attend or don't attend, the jobs we work in, the clubs we belong to, and so on. However, once we understand the power of the words, messages, symbols, and interactions of the organizations that surround us, we can be more aware of them and their influence on us. We can also become more aware of our influence within these organizations as well. As we discussed in our accompanying lecture, Organizations are dynamic entities that are constantly shifting and evolving based on organizing processes that find their foundations in communication. We may influence the evolution of organizations based on our communication within them. That's it for now. Our next practical application lecture will relate to organizational communication and leadership and how that applies to climate change in the environment.